Hi, today we will be learning about the substitution method, which is a method for solving systems of linear equations. Now there are 4 steps to this method. The first step is going to be to choose a term with a variable, and you'll see in just a few minutes that you're going to have 4 terms to choose from. The second step is going to be to solve that equation for that variable. In the third step, you're going to substitute the expression you found in step 2 into the other equation in the system and solve for the other variable. In step 4, you're going to substitute the value that you found in step 3 into one of the original equations and solve for the other variable's value. Now, remember, the end goal when we are going through all of these steps is to find a coordinate point. We're not just trying to find what x equals or what y equals, but we're trying to find the coordinate x, y. Now, when we go through these problems, I'd like you to label which step of the method that you're on, and I'm going to do so as well. I'd suggest that you use a colored pencil or colored marker so that your labeling is in a different color. That way your work is organized and easy to follow. Now let's look at our first example. Now before I even begin, I'm going to put in our answer box parentheses with a comma, just to remind us of what our answer is going to look like. Now the first step is going to be to pick a term. We could choose this y, this 5x, the other 5x, or the 2y. But I'm going to choose this y because it seems like it's going to be a little bit easier. Once you get accustomed to working with these problems, you're going to see that some terms are going to be a little bit easier to work with than others. And we don't even actually have to label that step, but the next step we are going to label. It's going to be to solve for that variable. I'm going to give that a 2. And that step is going to be to take this equation and solve for the variable that we chose. But we don't actually have to do any work because that variable is already solved for. So we can just go on to the third step. I'm going to label that with a 3. And that step is going to be to take the other equation and we're going to substitute in the expression that we know for y. So we're going to have 5x plus 2. Now instead of a y, we're going to write that expression 5x plus 1 because y and that expression are equal. Now this is an equation with one variable, and you all know how to solve this. So we're just going to go through this quickly. We'll distribute that 2. We'll get 10x plus 2. And then we will combine the like terms. We'll get 15x plus 2. Equals 32. Alright, and then I'll move this up here. And we will divide both sides by 15 and get that x equals 2. Now are we done? Not quite. We do have one piece of our answer. We haven't done step 4. And I'm going to label that with a 4, and that is going to be to take that value that we just found and substitute it into one of our original equations and find what y is. Now I'm going to use the first equation because I think it's going to be a little bit easier, but really you could use either equation. And we'll just figure out what y is, and we're going to find that y is 11. We'll put that in there, and our final answer is coordinate point 2, 11. Alright, our second example. Now again, the first thing I'm going to do is just remind us of what our answer is going to look like. Now the first step is to pick a term. I'm going to choose the negative 2y. Second step, solve for that variable. So I'm going to label my second step. And this time we're actually going to have to do some work because our variable isn't already solved for. So we'll rewrite the equation, and then we're just going to solve for y. Okay, negative 2y equals negative 2 minus 4x. Now remember, we're dividing each term by the negative 2. And we'll get that y is 1 plus 2x. The next step is to take that expression we just found for y, and we are going to substitute it into the other equation. The other equation is 5x plus 3. Now instead of y, we're going to write 1 plus 2x equals 14. And again, we all know how to solve these equations because they only have one variable in them. 5 plus 6 is 11, so we have 11x plus 3 equals 14. Subtract 3 from both sides. Get 11x equals 11. And then we'll find when we divide both sides by 11, x is 1. So now we have the 1 in our answer. The last step, we are going to pick one of our equations, and we're going to substitute the value for x into that equation and solve for y. I am going to choose the first equation. So we have 5, instead of x, we're going to write 1 plus 3y equals 14. So then we have 5 plus 3y equals 14. Subtract 5 from both sides, we'll get 3y is 9. And then y is 3. So our final answer is the 0.13. Okay, I would like you to pause the video now and try both of these problems in your math notebooks. Alright, so the first step in solving this equation is to pick a term. I'm going to choose the x, and I'm guessing that you did too. Our second step is going to be to solve for that variable. So we are just going to add 4y to both sides, and we'll get that x is 10 plus 4y. And then the next step is going to be the substitution. I'm going to take the first equation and substitute that 10 plus 4y in. We'll get 3 times 10 plus 4y minus 2y equals 40. Distribute that 3, get 30 plus 12y minus 2y equals 40. And then combine like terms. And then we'll subtract that 30 from both sides. I'm going to bring that right up here. We'll get 10y on the left of the equation. And then 40 minus 30 is just 10. Which then leaves us with y equals 1. Alright, and then to the final step, I'm going to plug it into the second equation. X minus 4 times 1 equals 10. So we just have x minus 4 is 10. Add 4 to both sides, and we'll get that x is 14. Which means our answer is 14, 1. Right, and then for the next problem, I'm going to choose negative 2y as my term. I'm guessing that most of you are starting to see some hints about which terms we should choose. But we'll talk about that more in class tomorrow. So we are solving this equation for the y. Negative 2y, 10 minus 4x. And then you get y equals negative 5 plus 2x. The next step is to substitute that expression into the other equation. So we'll get 4 times negative 5 plus 2x minus 6x equals 4. Negative 20 plus 8x minus 6x equals 4. We'll combine like terms. And then we'll add that 20 to both sides and divide both sides by 2, and we'll get that x equals 12. And then the last step is going to be to take that value and substitute it into one of the original equations. I'm going to choose the second equation. So we'll get 4y minus 6 times 12 equals 4. So that's 4y minus 72 equals 4. We'll add 72 to both sides. Get that 4y equals 76. Divide both sides by 4 to find that y is 19, which means our final answer is 12/19.